Okay, the Seder starts off Atem Nitzavim. So it says, Sheichem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Shedrechem. So Rashi touches up, Rosh Sheichem, Lishiftechem. In a way, it makes sense. Okay, so, and where does the rest of the Shevet comes in? I guess that would be on Kolish soil coming over there. I don't think he mentions that, but that's the fair way it would fit in. The Shaila is, so it's then Rashechem, Lishiftechem, Ziknechem. So why? That, if you want to, and then Kolish Yisrael, V'Shadrechem, and Kolish Yisrael. So somehow the extra word Shiftechem seems to be extra. Yeshiva Zatzal, when Pshat, this is really the Yisoid of our Yeshiva. I guess this is Yisoid of Chinuch, period. That it's Sheichem is Shiftechem. Not it's the leaders of your Shvatim, but who are the leaders? The Shvatim. Each person is able to be the leader. There's no such thing as, Joe is a leader, I'm not. No such thing as that. Every one of them can be a leader. And that's the mile of Klal Yisrael for all Bnei Malachim, or to be a king, whatever that means. One personality is one way, one personality is another way. But that is irrelevant to as far as Malchus, as far as the people accepting and understanding the person. The Rosh Zatzal was, I think, a very gentle person, a very quiet person, never demanded obedience except when it's Keneged Halacha, and whatever it is. And yet he was the Mishnah Mistafinim in the only one that I've ever seen in all the years, that if he said something, people were afraid to disagree with it. And that's a big thing. And yet he was a gentleman. And then you had other people that were fire and brimstone, and they may have had some control, but it was always with the fire and brimstone. Outside of the fire and brimstone, people were very critical. Not even Chavadik and stuff like that. But the idea is that the way he's teaching it, the Sheichem is the Shiftechem, means each person who has, and what we call average person, can be a Gadol. And he explained many times that the Torah was given to every Jew. Not only to the geniuses, it was given to every single Jew. That means every single Jew has the ability to reach that madrege. How long it takes, it's a different story. And I think Achi Ashilani is the one that maybe depicts this Maisa. The Gemara has a story of a Freda who had a Talmud that took 400 times to explain it to him. Now, it doesn't mean the recorders played 400 times. If that's the case, then all you need is a recorder. That's repeating it 400 times. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about explaining it to him for 400 times. One time you explained it to him in a derech of question and answer, and then he didn't understand. I presented to him as a raya and an upshlag. Still didn't understand. I presented to him as two sides of the debate, and he still didn't understand. And I keep working at taking pieces of this, pieces of that, until somewhere along the line, he got it. And once he got it, he got it. Okay, now, a normal person, if he would look at his life and he say, well, my life expectancy is 70 years. How much can I learn in one day? One halacha, two halachas, whatever it is there, 2 lines of Gemara. If I live to 70 years, so what am I going to learn? I'll learn one Masechta. Big deal. I'm not going to be a Talmid Chacham. Not going to be anything. Just know one Masechta, maybe. Right? So it doesn't pay for me. That person, even if he lives 1,000 years, will never become anything because he'll never start. But let's say, for instance, the person says, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but I got to do it. No one knows that, you say that that's the genius. He can learn 10 blot a day, right? And he's 22, and he looks like, well, by the time he's 25, he's going to be the Gadol Hador. And he gets hit by a truck when he's 23 years old. So what happened to that Gadol Hador? In other words, the fact that you have, or he had a heart attack, you don't have to have him hit by a truck at the end of the 90s. That he died. And he didn't have the years, so he never finished. He never got to be the Gadol Hador. He had the potential, that's true, but he didn't make it. So we can't depend on the potential. You can't say the guy who has the potential, he's going to make it, because you don't know if he's going to make it. So therefore, each person has to become the potential. So he learns whatever he can. It happens to be Achia Shaleni. The reason I picked on him is the Rambam, the list in this Agdama, into Yarech HaZokah, the 40 generations between Moshe and Rav Ashi. And in them, he has Achia Shaleni Kibel Midavid. And he went out of Mitzrayim. He was Miyotzi Mitzrayim. And he was a cotton at that time. You're talking about 400 odd years later. Not talking about Yesh Mitzrayim. Wow, he went out 20 years ago. Remember, he's not just a youngster. He was around at that time 20 years ago. He was around 50 years ago. 400 years ago he was around. But he was a young kid then. So he was a young kid, big deal. Right now it's 400 years later. He's not a little kid anymore. And yet he learned Torah from the ones that I know anyway, from let's say Eli. He's 98 years old, he died. I don't know how many years he actually was. He learned by him. He gave it over to Shmuel. So he died at 52. Gave it over to David, who died at 70. All of these guys are kids as far as he's concerned, but he went and learned by them until he became Achia Shaleni, until he became the next man. And he became one of the biggest Nevi'im there were. So the fact that he didn't have the kishra, he didn't have the ability, like a blitz. He worked and he worked every single day until he became Achia Shaleni. And that's the possibility of everybody that we have. And there's a joke, I don't know if it's a joke, but the Gemara has like a case, Mi Mechayev and Aniyim, so it's Hillel, and Shalom is Mechayev Ashirim, or rich people. They used to ask, who's Mechayev a good cup? So they used to say Reb Chaim Meizer. And who's Mechayev a shvache cup? Someone that hasn't got that ability. That's Maram Shik. Maram Shik was a Talmud of the Chassam Sefer. And he wrote a set of books this big. And he was not considered a very smart man. But he worked, and he became the smart man, and became the guy that knew everything. And that's what the Torah is telling us. Every single one of us has that ability to be that guy. We don't know if we will or not. That's a different story. But every one of us has an effect, definitely on our immediate circle for sure. But even on the wider circle, you never know how many people you meet and whatever it is, and how you impress them, and so on. And therefore, each one of us, I think, and then the words make sense. But Sheichem is Shiftechem. That is the Shiftechem. Okay. Um, yeah, can't read what I wrote. Sorry. Yeah, not the same thing. Anyway, the Rashi, the pasuk keeps going on, and there's a Rashi here says like it's a funny lashon that it says, what the Nitzavim Vayeylech. It's not the normal language that's used. I didn't want to say we're all here today. So Rashi says the reason that it's mentioned this way is because when the Klal Yisrael heard the 98 Kololos in Parshas Kisavai and the 49 in Parshas Chukaisai, they became sick, green, white, whatever whatever color you like to have for someone that gets sick. And that's what happened to them. So what is Moshe Rabbeinu coming and telling them? Don't worry, guys. You guys are in front of God. As long as you keep trying to be there, He's going to be with you. He's not going to collect from you. He's not going to beat you up. You're going to be fine. Just don't give up. Keep going and you'll be fine. Okay? So now we all feel better that it's up to us. Okay, so now he starts telling us, starting his Musa. You guys know all the problems that we saw throughout the world. And maybe you have somebody, a man or woman, a family, a shevet, that somehow they decide they want to follow other ideas. Doesn't have to be necessary Avodah Zarah. We'll talk about that in a minute. And he'll say, when he hears this, he'll say, Shalom Yeli, I'll have peace. I'll do what I want to do. Now this guy's sick. He just heard all the clothes. He heard all the stuff that existed in the thing there. And then decides, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Doesn't make sense. I mean, if he doesn't believe, he doesn't believe. Then why'd he bother reading it? But if he bothers reading it and he believes, so how could he possibly say that? And the Indian is Laman Sveis of Oves Hatzmeya. The Gemara gives 3 cases of Laman Sveis of Oves Hatzmeya. I'll talk about one really, because the other one, the 2 is, that way I don't really have a good hezbollah. But let's say one of them is a Magza Aveda to a guy. He found an object, looked at the thing. It says John Misapanano, and he decided to return it to him. And if he did it because he wanted to make a kiddush Hashem, first of all, he counted the money in there. And he found there was $3,000 in it. Okay. And he wants to make a Kiddush Hashem, and it's worth to him $3,000 to make a Kiddush Hashem. Wonderful man. Man, should we give him a lot of schar? But if he feels it doesn't belong to me, it's dishonest for me to keep it, then he's going against the Torah. Why? We'll talk in a second. So what is he trying to say? So let's say he knows that it's against the Torah. But he says, Rabbeinu Shalom, I think I'm fairer than you are. You somehow have some bigotry against Goyim. I don't. So I feel I'll give it back to them. Right? That person, it says, Rabbeinu Shalom won't forgive him, he'll destroy him, whatever it says later in the Pasha. What did the guy do? All he said is, I feel it's fair and honest to return it to the guy. Not a big deal. Like we'd all agree with him. He's like a nice guy. The Torah says, Avedis of a goy, really. There's nothing that would not come here. Belongs to you, to the finder. And we all understand that. We all went through kid vice, losers, weepers, finders, keepers. We knew that. We also know possession is 9/10 of the law. So obviously it makes sense to say that you find it, you can keep it. So why do I have to return it? Because the din is, by Aveda for a Jew, you have to return. Why? Well, let's understand it. The Rebbeinu Shem, we have Hashgacha Pratis. Now, with the Rebbeinu Shem, every little thing that happens to us is all basically cheshbon. So let's say I did a sin, and what the sin wants, the Rebbeinu Shem wants for punishment, I should lose a certain amount of possessions for a week's time. So I lose that object. A week later, somebody returns it to me. So we had the question of the Einish or Iskifil. The Goyim don't have Hashgacha Pratis. I don't know exactly how the Rebbeinu Shem deals with them, but it's not Hashgacha Pratis. So therefore, when he gives possession to a Goy, he gives it to him only as long as he has it. He loses it, he loses possession, then it's not his anymore. We have a case by the Yidden, the same thing in a way. Avuda mimenu mikolodom. If, let's say, what do you call it? You have a flood, and it washed out everything from your house. And someone was walking along the river after the flood, and he said, "Oh, there's a beautiful couch. You know, that one isn't that Joe's couch?" Joe was about 5 miles up the road. But you can't get at it now. Look at those rapid waters that are coming in. It's a lost object. It's going to be killed. It's dead, right? So it's avodah mimenu mikolodem. Nobody can get it. When that happens, it's hefker. And all of a sudden, it gets stuck by a tree. And I'm lucky enough to walk by that tree, and I'm able to get it. It's mine. Even though I know it's Joe's. Some people hold like it as a mitzvah of, what do you call it, of giving it back, and the Lefi Mishur Sadin. And others will hold Tafi that there's no Lefi Mishur Sadin. Why? Because this is not yours anymore. It's not yours anymore, someone else can take it. Just like by the guy, it's not his anymore, if I can take it. But if I want to make a Kiddush Hashem, then you know that you're spending your $3,000 to make a Kiddush Hashem. You're not saying easy come, easy go. Not saying it's not really my money anyway. It is your money. You want to spend it on a Kiddush Hashem, that's a wonderful thing to do. But that has to be your attitude. Where do we see this? Who else did this thing? We find Zdoim and Amorah. We all think about Zdoim and Amorah, terrible countries, terrible people. Wow. You're right, they probably were. But what made them terrible? What made them terrible? Hitler was a more terrible person, if you ask me. And God didn't sit down and the lightning and Gofus for Kolatza for him. Why did he pick on poor Zdoim and Amorah? 4 little cities there, with a bunch of Rishoyim living there. It's a big deal. They'll destroy themselves. One day the people will come along and get rid of them because they'll figure who needs such animals around the world. Why? Why do you have to go down and destroy them personally? Because Rashi says, Oyim v'chatoyim l'Hashem ma'od in Parshas Lech Lecha. So he says, what does ma'od mean? That they knew who God is and they revolted against him. How do you revolt against God if you know who God is? Doesn't make any sense. So I'll give you a moshel. Guys appreciate it, I think. Younger kids play where one kid will grab the other kid's hand and hold it behind his back and jerk it up. And he says, say uncle. And the kid refuses to say uncle. And he gives it another little shove up. And it hurts, boy, it really hurts now. But he's not saying uncle. He's saying, you're crazy. Why aren't you saying uncle? He's going to stop any minute because he's afraid of breaking my arm, and I'm not giving in. And the other guy, why are you doing this? Because I wanted to say uncle, right? Because I'm not going to break his arm, of course. I'm just going to go as far as I can go in the thing there. Okay. So we have a question: who has more, I guess, call it chicken than the other one? But when you're dealing with someone that you know is going to break your arm, so why would you say uncle right away? Because why should I have to endure any pain? He's going to break my arm anyway. So I might as well say uncle. God's going to break your arm anyway. So what's the point? So how do you fight against God? I got a better way. Because they don't think there's anything wrong with saying I got a better way. In other words, Christianity, the Old Testament God, fire and brimstone, the loving God of the New Testament. Right? The Jews evolved in their concepts of what do you call it? That we're just getting there, that we got rid of all the old hashkafas that we have, which is reform and conservatism, about the things that how religion evolves. And then you have the other ones who think they know better than the Torah. Yeah, whole shittas, they are. That is the biggest avera there is. The Rebbe Hashem gave a Torah that is balanced and has everybody's, does not go wrong. It can't go wrong. Anything else can go wrong. May not go wrong right away. It may seem like it's a good idea, but in the end, it's going to go wrong. Give me a marshal. New York City. It's a very, besides being a democratic city and everything else, it also has a lot of Rahmanis in it, and they send up many programs that you have for housing, for whatever it is there. And if someone really has no housing, they'll put them up in a hotel. And therefore, if there was a period of time when you had a lot of what they called welfare hotels, and the reason that a welfare hotel was that they didn't have enough housing, so they had to put them up in a hotel. So the hotel charged $100 a room for 4 people in the room, no food. And since it was a welfare hotel, what happened was loaded with people who were on welfare. Among them are diabetics, Zionists, and so on. So the lobby was not a very good place for me to keep running with my kids. On the other hand, I can't bring in a little stove, hot plate as they call it, and cook in my own room because it's a fire trap. So I have to eat out. So they gave you at that time, they were paying $100 a month, a day, man, for the hotel room. And they gave you, I think, $269 a month for food, 4 people. If you can cook it yourself, maybe at that time it was possible to do. But if you had to go to McDonald's even, that's the cheapest, toughest place you can go. And it's at probably $1 a breakfast, right? So you're able to have 4 breakfasts, is $4. The lunches was $10, and suppers was $12. How long is the $269 going to last you? So somewhere along the 15th, 16th date, you're dead broke. And you come over and you say to the welfare person, you know, I need food. I have no food. What do you mean you have no food? You know what we spent on you? We spent for the year, we spent $36,000 on you. 36,500 if you want, okay? And for food, we gave you $269 a month. That's $2,600, whatever it is, $3,500 for 12 months. Okay, so up to about 40,000 already. Up to 40,000. And what about a little bit? Had a closing allowance a little bit, and same thing there. It costs the city already $40,000. We can't afford to give you more. But you didn't solve my problem. I'm hungry. It's not my problem. That's the difference between the Torah and Sodom. The Torah said you have a chiyuv, as much as he needs. Say it again, I can't hear it. Say machseri, to give someone whatever he needs. I'll give you a motion what a guy might need. 12 o'clock at night, somebody's knocking at your door. He says, I mean, obviously talking about a place where you weren't afraid to open the door. Okay, you open the door at 12 o'clock at night, and the guy say, I need food. I haven't got any food. What do I have to do now? Give him $1? Not going to help me. He can't do anything with that $1. I got to sit down and cook him supper. That's the din of the Torah. I'll make him supper. Now, it's not a very good deal. A lot of people don't want to do that, right? So Sodom came along and said, you know, we got a better idea than God's. You can't put such an obligation on people. It's too much. Tell you what we'll do. Give them a check. That's the best thing. Okay, where do we see that they did that, Stein? Because it says there when a poor person would succumb, they would give him a gold coin with their name on it. And then it wasn't the person, no one sold him any food, so therefore he died of hunger with all these gold coins. And then each person came and took his gold coin back. Now let me ask you, why did they give the gold coin? Shouldn't they just, don't the person who doesn't give to charity like to say, you're a parasite on society and give the guy a good bawling out for asking for tzedakah? Wouldn't he feel better that way instead of giving the guy the gold coin and helping him? So obviously they believe in charity. So what do you mean they believe in charity and let the guy die? Doesn't make sense. United States. I gave the check. I gave him $10. But July 4th on a Tuesday. July 4th on a Tuesday, I stay actually closed all week. No point in opening before and no point in opening after. So therefore I'm closed for the week. I take my vacation. The whole town shuts down. The guy's got money, but he can't spend it. There's no place to spend it. And therefore he dies. So that's what the Torah is telling you. Any way that's different than the Torah is going to have some kind of an accent like that somewhere along the way. That's why it is always us and all the things that we spoke about last time. And this is what rules the world. So a guy who thinks he got better ideas than the Torah is also going to destroy the world, ultimately. Okay, so that's the translation assessment. Then you have you also see that this is talking about a single individual who has this thoughts, and then it says God destroys the whole country. Why destroy the country? One guy sinned. Why destroy the country? So it says, if him, and we'll ask me, Kol Shiftei Yisrael, now you separated him, and then the generation afterwards is going to say, what happened to this land? Why did it get destroyed like that? So the whole land got destroyed. So how did this happen? So he says, because from one person, the ideas change and grow and so on until it affects everybody and then the whole country gets destroyed. And that's how it is in all these things. You have some kook comes along and decides to make some kind of a thing, and then he'll get 20 people to join him, and then they go out and make an appeal, and it sounds like good, and another 100 people join them for that. And after a while, they like how did reform grow, and how did conservatism grow, and how did, if God doesn't want to be religious, don't be religious. Why did you grow to these type of things? Because one guy came up with an idea, and then we follow him. And that's the trouble with everybody. And then he continues on with this, and then it tells you at the end, and the story is Hashem Elokeinu, whatever is hidden is God's. Now with the din of Arvus, we are now responsible for everybody else. The kasha becomes, before we said that they got sick from hearing the clothes that Shaykh to get. And now and then he made us feel better because he told us to try it and be okay. Then he tells me now that, you're not only responsible for yourself, but for everybody else you're responsible. So how am I going to make it? How am I going to get sick? So what it's telling us is somehow not doesn't make me feel any better, any stronger. But then Hashem telling us no. When I'm going to tell you a fact, I'm going to make you responsible for the other, you're right. But what I'm doing by telling you that is I'm giving you the solution to the problem. What's your problem? Your problem is you're affected by this das yochid that comes along and he keeps hacking until he has enough people to join him. And after people join him, it's possible to even overwhelm the other people, like we've seen happening over the years. The ones who lived through abortion saw how many years it took for them to pass it. They used to bring it up every year, and it used to get knocked down very fast. And every time you had one more guy who agreed, one more guy that went along, until finally they passed it and they won. And that's how we have all the things. And the reason why these things happen is because they're a vocal minority. And we have a silent majority. And the silent majority can't win against the vocal minority. The Torah is telling us, though, what can save you is the fact that I made you responsible for him. So the fact that if he wins, the vocal minority wins, that I'm going to punish you for it. So what must I do in order to make sure that he doesn't win? I have to make sure I become a vocal majority. If you have a vocal majority against a vocal minority, then the vocal majority will win. And that's what the Torah is telling us to do. He wants us to become the vocal majority. Then it says, the Parasha of Tshuva. By the way, this week we're having Nitzavim Vayeylech together. So if you have together, so usually you try to put a Parasha together, you don't break a Parasha up. The Parasha in front of us is the Parasha of Tshuva, which goes from V until Shishi. And it has Chamish in the middle. Okay? Broke it up. Why? Because it's a small segment only has 40 psukim. So you have to find out where you can stop, and it's not enough psukim there. So therefore, it stops, breaks it up. But it also tells you that if you break it, even when the settlers are together, okay, the guy from there too many psukim, there's another 30, but 30 psukim is more psukim. You could at least now leave the thing as one parsha. Make another break somewhere else. Leave the parsha together. And no, we break it anyway by the same place. So mashma that there are two steps in tshuva. At least for the Klal Yisrael, what's going to happen. And it could be it's happening. It says, when you have all these solos that come apart, you mean is the Twocha and the Klola. And what bigger things that we had was the what they call the Shoah, the Holocaust. Right? And then all of a sudden, you think, I want to do someone to tshuva mamish, someone to have a Jewish homeland, someone to have at least avas Yisrael. I want to save Jews, whatever the reasons. And you, to a certain extent, you do tshuva. And the Feinstein, because of that, will collect you from all the nations, which he's doing right now, or has done already, except from the United States, and brought you to Eretz Yisrael. All the countries are there. And the more we were comfortable in the country, the more the Feinstein made us hate that country. And the reason that the Feinstein did that is because we should not keep the culture of that country. We don't remember the day we went out of Mitzrayim. I mean, the day we became free of Mitzrayim. But we do remember the day we went out of Mitzrayim. That's what we have to remember, the day we went out of Mitzrayim. But if you translate the words, it's a little bit strange. Yitzias Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim left. The leaving of Mitzrayim, that's what Yitzias Mitzrayim means, right? Mitzrayim didn't go anywhere. Still in North Africa, wherever it was originally. So what do you mean Yitzias Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim left me. The culture is gone. When did the culture leave you? The day you left Mitzrayim. If you remember, after the Second World War, I don't know if you can remember even now, you can ask your parents or grandparents, you buy German. And they'll tell you no. Why don't you buy German? It's better stuff. I don't buy German. But it's but it doesn't make a difference. I don't buy German. And we understand that. Why? Because I made you hate Germany. Right? We're having problems now. People are starting to love them again. But AC made you hate Germany. France. The people that left France are not buying French stuff anymore. Not buying the biggest design of the clothes or anything else that's coming out of France. It's French. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And this is the way the Rebbe should make kibbutz goli. He says, think about it. How many Jews is there in Africa? A little bit in Morocco. How many Jews are there in Asia? Right there, but not that many. You have Australia, 58,000, something like that. You have South Africa, I forgot, you have about 3,000. And you have Europe, which probably the total of a few 100,000, maybe. But England don't have 100,000. France may still have, Russia doesn't anymore, Poland for sure not. Austria, Hungary, all these countries that have both teaming with Jews don't have any. Where are they? Now it's Israel. Remember when the state started, anyone around that time? There weren't too many Jews living there. Now, You got what, about 8 million? You got 5 million here. That's it. Maybe 1 million in the rest of the world. So the Rebbeinu is making kibbutz goliaths. Maybe our time now. So don't think I'll go with it. I don't know. Rabbi brings the guru without it. So we're all in Eretz Yisrael, and what's the management going to do for us when we do this tshuva? And Baruch Hashem, Eretz Yisrael is booming with tshuva. You have yeshivas all over the galore. You walk down the street in Yerushalayim, and I once had to take a long walk one Shabbos, and we passed different neighborhoods, and the Yidden were going to shul and from shul in every neighborhood, and they said Good Shabbos. And hundreds of Jews, different kinds of Jews, Yitzvadim and Ashkenazim, and all the different kinds of levels and different things. And they're all Jews, they're keeping Shabbos. And I didn't pass through the fire neighborhood, so I really don't know, but I was passing through the Fruman neighborhoods, as we call it. And that's who it was. I think in the Knesset now, I don't know for sure, the last one, the one that they were just finished with, was 61 Shomer Shabbos. That means some people in Yesh Atid are also Shomer Shabbos. That's true. Why they belong to Yesh Atid, that's politics. Abel, they Shomer Shabbos. So the fact that there's people, and how many people that are becoming Bali Tshuva in Eretz Yisrael and so on, Eretz Yisrael is growing. And what happened to Eretz Yisrael when you grow? I'll give you a bracha, more bracha than your father's had. What is Eretz Yisrael now? It's probably one of the major technology countries, major medical countries. I don't know what else they're doing, but there's definitely a lot of other stuff that they're doing, and they're major in it. Arms development, spy systems, whatever you want to call it, they're there. So as far as, and it's considered, as far as a poor country, it's considered one of the wealthier countries in the world. And they even have billionaires there. So they made their money in Russia. That doesn't make a difference, but they live in Israel now. So that is the bracha I'm giving you out to Yisrael. You're going to have all this, but you're not there yet. What am I going to have to do for you to make you get there? I'm going to have to make milas halev. I'm going to have to cut something off from that stuff that you're still looking for the goyim's approval, the goyim's sheikhs and all that thing. I'm going to cut it off from you. I'm going to make milas halev. And after you have milas halev, what are you going to do? And that's the second part of the tshuva, which is after Bishi. I'm going to learn the Torah again, and this time with a heart that had milah already, that's able to accept the Torah and a clear Torah and what it wants. And therefore, I'll work it that way with no compromises, and no misunderstandings, and no my own objectives. And I'll do what God wants. And what I'll do, I'll learn to keep His mitzvahs. It didn't say all His mitzvahs. It says His mitzvahs with the deal. Enough to make it that was zeicher to geula, was zeicher to be when you go not l'leishul mean, but with no one will rule over you, whatever it is, and so on like that. So this is basically the end of what do you call it? The end of Tshuva. Then it says, "Ya mitzvah zois shenech mitzavechem." It's not hidden. It's not in Bashamayim. It's not Be'vayam. Even though many things people think it is Be'vayam, I have to go to seminary in Eretz Yisrael. I got to go to Eretz Yisrael after before I get married or after I get married, then I come back. And before I get married, I have to have a couple of years in Eretz Yisrael. Then I come back, and then I get married, whatever it is. There's this period of time that goes there. Title of Ancient says, you don't have to go anywhere. It's yours by you. It's in your heart. My mother used to always say, you guys, you want to learn a Platz zu lernen, a place to learn. Mein Mann, he's over Shishivas hat gesucht für a Winkel zu lernen, for a little corner to be able to learn. That's the difference. Why? Because I don't need the outside things. You got it, it's inside you. You want to learn? Right here. You don't want to learn? Go all over the world. Doesn't make a difference. You're not going to learn. Yes, just couple of things in Vayeylech. The mitzvah of Hakel. It's also a Vachtel of Shishivas. This was made specifically for Americans years ago. I would say for the 1940s and 50s, possibly the 60s. It says over here that heavy Shemitah, you're supposed to read Beis HaBracha. I mean, not the Bracha, all of the volume. Then Chalamed, and the Melech would read the Torah. At that time, he'd read, what do you call it? And who has to come to hear this, to be there? So it says, you will Hakel is home, gather the nation, Hanoshim, the men, Hanoshim, the women, Vahataf, and the children, the Gercha Shabisharecha, and the Gerim. So there's a Gemara that Rabbi Shiur, forgot he was old, he stopped going to yeshiva already. Two of his Talmidim visited him. And the first thing he asked him is, well, what did they say in the yeshiva today? What big deal was in the yeshiva? He said, we came to learn from you. We didn't come to teach you anything. Yeah, he says, even what all you tell me does it. But ain't yeshiva, but with Chidush, there's got to be something there that you learned something special today. And he says, whose week was it? It was a time of Gamliel one day. Had and they first threw him out, and then they took him back. Then they divided either 2 to 3 weeks for him and 1 week for Elazar ben Azariah. So he said it was the week of Elazar ben Azariah. And he says, so what did he say? He said, why did the Hanoshim came? The Anoshim came, why? To learn. The women, Hanoshim, why did they come? To hear. Bataflom, boy, why did the kids come? So he said, to give schar to their children, to the ones who bring them. And Rabbi Yeshua jumps up with a tiny and he says, you wanted to hide this jewel from me? The whole generation that the Elazar ben Azariah is in can't be a Dar Yosef. Such genius, such what he called it, said it. She asked, what did he say? Of course, if there's a tzivu, you're going to get schar for it. So what was the chiddush that he said? He said, this is what he said. He said, the trouble with why they don't bring kids to learn is some people say, my kid, he's not going to be a rabbi anyway. So what's the point? Another parent will say, he's not such a smart kid. You want to put a dual program on him. He can't take it. Another parent will say, my kid, he's sick. Can't possibly take the grind, the nitty-gritty that has to go along with that. She says, the only reason, it's the only mitzvah that people make up their mind of why you should go to learn. I told you to go learn. I didn't tell you why you should learn. You're making it up why you should learn because you have to become smart, because you have to be a rabbi, because you have to be this thing. I didn't tell you that. I told you learn. So this is the point. I'm telling you to bring your children to the yeshiva. Why? Because that's the mitzvah. Bring your kid to the yeshiva. Not for the reason that he's going to yeshiva. Bring him to yeshiva. And then you'll discover that Baruch Hashem, he's not so stupid, and he's not so sick, and he's not so weak. And Baruch Hashem, all your excuses will disappear because they become a big Talmud Chacham. That was the thing. That was at that time, they didn't bring the kids to learning with all these excuses that they had. And they didn't want to learn. Okay, that's Hakya. Now, a little bit to understand how we have to look at the Rebbeinu Shalom and how important that is in our relationship. The next parsha right after Chamishi, it says, Rebbeinu comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, you're going to die, and the Jews are going to go do Avodah Zarah. Okay. And what am I going to do because of that? I'm going to be very angry. And because of that, I'm going to leave them. And I'm going to close my eyes from them. And they're going to have a lot of troubles in life. A lot of things are going to happen to them. And when they'll realize that all these things are happening to them, then they'll say, why are these things happening? It's because God is not among us. And therefore, I'm going to hide, and at that time, I'm going to hide my face from them, and that's it. And from all the bad, I'm not going to look at all the bad happening to them. What is the end of the story? Are they going to be destroyed or not? The Chayrish, it seems to be they are. We know, Hasta Pana, I will hide my face from them. The Gemara says, Esther Minayim, where's Esther in the Torah? Esther Panai. I will hide my face from them. But by Esther, he didn't hide his face. He hid his face originally, but he pretended that they're going to let the Jews die, but then he came and saved them. Right? So that's the end of the story over there. Here it didn't tell me the end of the story, that it's going to happen over here. So now we have to understand what the Torah is thinking about, and I think we'll understand that he is telling us the end of the story. When the trouble started to happen to the Yidden, what did they say? God is not among us. Right? Where is he? It's over there. We got to go bring him over here. Okay. That's the mistake, I think, that mentions money. God is here. It's right here in the sky. I just have to acknowledge it. It's not a point I have to go find him. He is here. Accept him. He's here. And that's what happened by Esther. They accepted him. He turned his face away, but they knew he was here. So they were apologetic. And they said, and that was it. And then he saved them. You don't have to go find them. And I think because of that, I'd like to give a touch to Hashem Echad. You know, we normally translate it as one God, God is one, because we believe in monotheism, only one God. When we say that, monotheism, we mean to say one God against the Greeks' 1,000 gods, or the other countries' 50 gods or 20 gods. That's the main thing that we're talking about here. But we're trying to say many more things with that. We're saying God is infinite, both in time and size. And if God is infinite, that means there is no end. And if there's no end, there's no room for the second guy. So by saying he's one, means there is no other one, because there can't be another one, because if there is another one, then he's not one anymore. And to be one, you have to be a total one. That's one of the proofs of the Rabbi against Christianity. They want to translate it, there are three that are one. So he said if you can count them as three, you can make it look at it as three, then even though you put them to one, but they can't be infinite anymore. Once there's a division line that it's possible to divide, it can't be infinite. So Mela, God being infinite, he can't be three that are one. It has to be only one. And that is the important part that we have to understand. And when we accept that God is here, then there's no problem that he will answer us, come to our help, and so on. And because of that, he wants that we should have, this is a lead-in a way to Ozyoshia, to Azino, which we're going to learn. So may prove it, not next week, Rosh Hashanah, but in 2 weeks. Yeah. And we did anything else to think fist, to give a thing about fist. I don't really have anything fist. Anyway, have a good Shabbos, everybody.